we're back for episode number 2. Episode 1, I think, did pretty good. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I was looking at, we were going to be about here as far as views, listens, and we've doubled what I thought we were going to have. So I think we're doing pretty good.
Awesome.
So
and
that's
attributable to your hat. So I don't know that
you got a lot of compliments to this hat, man.
Yeah, I liked your hat from day one.
I was actually gonna wear my other hat, my other Stetson Open Road, but it's a felt hat. It's too hot,
I like
man.
that hat
It's
right
too
there.
hot.
It's
too hot to be out
Fits
there.
well.
And so somebody was asking me, like, why are you all of a sudden start wearing a hat? Like, for one, I like hats. Now I'm older, I think I can pull it off, And second, I'm just too lazy to comb my hair in the morning. I am. I'm just,
That's a pretty good
Whatever
thought
works for
process.
you. Whatever works for
yeah,
you as well.
that's what I say. So, what feedback did y'all get for that first episode from y'all's circle of friends?
I heard
colleagues?
everything. I heard everyone loved it. They were excited. They asked, when is the next one coming out? And so they're looking forward to it.
I know I saw in the Facebook on the YouTube comments, and also Facebook comments, because we shared it on Facebook. A lot of we had a handful of the old students, the former students, back when Bob was
Still teaching.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were
trying.
You were I guess, were you the only one at one point? Were you the only
at first?
Walleye? Yeah.
At first, and then
so there's a few of
guys.
them, and it just goes to show how far this program has reached. Because some of these former students are working in Mexico. There's some of the international students that came through here. I know one guy. I'll give him a shout out because I know he watched Oscar. What is his last name? I'm sorry, man. I shouldn't have said your name.
He's from Monterey.
Yeah.
And they're big in the
Acuña.
ganaderas.
And so he listened, and I remember him from when he was here. There were some other cats.
Actually,
too,
his dad is big in the ganaderos of Mexico, and basically they invited me down there to give a talk years ago, and allowed me the opportunity to take Sabrina Horton, one of our really fine students, and down there, and she made a presentation. I worked with her on it, and probably the highlight of her life.
Yeah, Oscar Garcia Acuña.
Yes. Yes.
So I remember him when he was here on campus.
Yeah, they're ranching family out of Monterey. Beautiful place. Been all over their ranch, and wonderful people and good friends.
And
just
so,
really good friends.
you've gone down there and visited?
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Oh yes.
So was that, like, for him? Was that the goal? Like, okay, we're going to send him off to
his
Southwest
dad
Texas
wanted him to
College.
be trained by someone that could help him assist in managing their family ranch, and they had a beautiful ranch. And one thing I remember about it is the olive trees. There's tons of olive trees on it, and they were blossoming when I was there.
Oh, okay.
When Sabrina and I were there, and it was just like a snowstorm hit it.
Yeah.
It was really pretty. And they had a silver mine that we went into on the place, and I still collected a few pieces of silver that was on the ranch. It is just a really remarkable place. Really nice. And a lot of bears too, which I was enthused to see, because we don't have, at that time we had transient bears, but not that many.
Yeah.
And they seem to be increasing at this point in time in our vicinity.
And those are black bears?
Black bears.
You don't see very many of those around here, right?
No, but they're coming in. We had one come in, Uvalde actually, just
Was
on
that
the west side of town.
Was that the one that Rios was?
Yeah, Mr. Rios.
Yeah, that was like the headlines on Facebook. Like, everybody, oh, we saw it over here. Oh, we saw it over there.
Yeah, and David and I, we darted a bear one time, probably, 10, 12 years ago, that was caught in a snare on a ranch south of, in Kinney County, south of Brackettville. And there's a funny story there, because David was a little nervous about handling that bear, and when he darted him, the bear wasn't going anywhere. He's in a snare, right? He's not going to attack. And basically, before I could get my hands on the bear, which it wasn't a rambunctious bear. I mean, this female, big female, was not too worried about anything. But when we got up to it, before I could do anything, David already induced another series of drugs into it because he wanted to protect himself. And I said, "Daggum, David, you're going to kill the rascal." But only thing it did was prevent me from filming it immediately upon release. And I had to wait for it to come out of a pretty strong dosage of wampum and tilazol and tilazol and xylazine. And basically I had to wait for about an hour in the sun while David and the game warden waited in an air-conditioned pickup truck about 300 safe yards from the bear. Yeah.
But Bob was able to get a pretty fantastic picture of that too.
Yeah, and one of my pictures was hung in portrayed at the Parks and Wildlife main headquarters in Austin for years from that capture. It was a pretty unique time period for bear biology.
That leads me to another question that I've had for you. And I always think about asking, but when I think about it, you're not around. When you're around, I never think about it. So now it's a perfect opportunity. So you're a photographer. You're a accomplished photographer. You've done many and many, I've had many photos published by different publications. So how did you get into photography, or does that go hand in hand with wildlife?
I remember, I just liked filming wildlife, particularly. That was the emphasis of obtaining my first camera, which I couldn't afford much as an undergraduate at West Virginia University. And the first thing I ever filmed was a bluebird, but that has blossomed, believe me. And now I've had I probably had 60 covers on magazines across the nation, national and state publications. And I still film every year. Matter of fact, Dean and Daniel and I just came back from a field trip where we were filming desert sheep. And contrary to Dean trying to screw us out of good opportunities to film, we still got to capture some pretty good pictures. But I've been filming for a long time, probably over 40 years, and still have a lot of publications. Matter of fact, just recently I took first and second place in both the wildlife and people categories of nature at our Texas Outdoor Writers Association, which I've done several times over the past few years. So, yeah, I've I don't know that I'm that accomplished, but anything you really love, you do good at.
Right.
I mean, it's not you put that extra effort into it, and it's been very rewarding in my lifetime.
I know Daniel also does quite a bit of photography.
Yeah, Bob's rubbed off on me. It's exciting. It's a heck of a challenge, and I feel like it's a really good skill, and I think it's a really good skill that we can pass off to students as well. That's something that we incorporate into the program, and now Dean has a very nice camera as well, and so it's something that Bob has passed to us, and we are collectively moving forward with.
They all want to be little Bobby Z's,
Exactly.
There's only one Bob, man.
Hey,
there's only one.
You always try to replicate your life mentor, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I agree.
What is that
cool.
saying? Imitation is the best form of
Flattery,
right?
Yeah,
there you go. So,
pretty good.
Yeah, we like to have a little bit of competition,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, but we failed to see anything yet, so it's okay.
Hey, we're just getting
doing
started
okay.
here. You got to be patient, right?
Yeah.
You planted a seed, now you got to let it grow.
Yeah. Dean will ask me questions in the field. What's this lid on here for? I've been taking pictures, and they're all dark.
Yeah.
Why is it black? I can't see anything.
But anyhow, it's all fun, and we enjoy it. And these two will take off and become really good at it. It takes time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, you got that creativity in you. If you love something, you're going to apply it, and it's fun. It's just like wildlife management.
Yeah.
If you like working in the field, managing wildlife, it makes your career path much easier to choose, and not only to choose, but to succeed in. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Is just how do you become a wildlife
biologist? Yeah, I want to get to that. But first, I guess before I forget, we're recording this. It's a week after graduation. Saw you guys there, and y'all had some students that graduated. So what was your experience and feedback from graduation? And
Oh, with graduation, it's always nice to see the families and to be able to talk to mom and dad and see what their students have done the past 2 years. And so I don't know, it's just a good sense of camaraderie. It's fun to hear the stories coming from the parent side. We have one student, dad came up and started talking to us, and he's like, my son's always looking at plants every time we go to the pasture now. It's like you've changed his lens in a way. He's looking at his world a little different, and so that's always cool because we there's things that we apply, like the very foundation of wildlife management's plant identification. You got to understand what deer eat in order to manage deer, and so to see some of those things stick, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's exciting to see the students, when they're getting ready to cross the stage and walk in and and then talk to the parents as well. And sometimes they share information that you had no idea, and so it's really great to see, and then have the students kind of finally complete their degree too. And so that's a really good.
So do you have some students that are transferring?
Yes. Yep. We do have a couple of students this year. Quite a few of them are going to A&M Kingsville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of our students head off to Saul Ross. Saul Ross is our cohort in educating our youngsters, breaking them in well. It's a great institution, as is A&M Kingsville. And we've had a few go to A&M. But, I like to think of wildlife management the way we teach it here, and the way I emphasized our teaching pattern of mentoring, and that is I consider it a life enriching experience. In other words, it's like learning how to play tennis. You're not going to make it to Wimbledon. Chances are minimal to none. Yeah. Okay. But you're going to experience it over and over again. You could utilize all this education, all this, which is powerful, makes you a more intelligent person, but you could look at things differently when you're out in the field. And, I have a concept where like, for instance, hunting, I always thought when you first start hunting, you want to shoot everything. You want to shoot a limit. You want to get, you had a goal. And, and when you mature, when you become a mature sportsman, you're one in which you're more conservative. You're allowing more animals like deer to walk to see how much bigger they get. Or you may want to try to complement their diet with some sort of new supplement. All these things, and to understand what plants they eat or consume is critically important too, because then it allows you an opportunity to manage that land holding to augment the development of those particular species.
So you talked earlier about becoming a wildlife biologist, and I know that's something that we wanted to cover in the podcast, just to give an insight, or give some insight to some of these students that maybe want to be doing this for a living. So can you, I guess, just give us an overall or an overview of what it is, or what the process is to becoming a wildlife biologist by starting here at Southwest Texas College?
Yeah, so one of the great things that we offer is associates in applied science in wildlife management. We're the only ones in the state that do that, and so we're very much a standout in that. And so students can come to us, get really good hands-on opportunities through the captures and everything that we offer in the field. And they build their resume. It's not just the degree, it's all the activities and the things that they do, the ranch internships, all the skills that they can acquire along the way to achieving their 2-year associates. And then from us, they can go on and get a job directly into the wildlife field and private land, or transfer with their bachelor's to like a place like Sol Ross, where we've had articulation agreement, where our classes directly transfer to them, and then they can get finished with their bachelor's or even finish with their master's.
So what does it take? I mean, how many more? I guess, is it 2 more years at Sol Ross to get their
bachelor's? Yes, sir.
So what are they studying there that they didn't study here, or is it just more of what they did here?
It's going to be more of what they do here, and then more focalized in probably the research side of what we do. We're very much the hands-on, practical, private land aspect of wildlife management. But when you go to a 4-year degree, you're going to have some more technical as far as research goes.
Right.
And more of the theory behind, academics behind wildlife management.
Yeah, what really cool aspect is Daniel went through the program here when Bob was teaching, and so it's really great to see that Daniel, he's when he's talking and working with the students, he's been there and done that and seen that. So I think that's really important to have an instructor here, faculty, staff that's gone through the program and then has gone on to the other universities such as Sul Ross, and then Daniel got his master's as well. And so our classes, what's really unique about our program is the students aren't taking basic courses. We're not taking a bunch of histories, a bunch of federal governments, that typical students take when they're first or second year. Their first semester here, they're taking wildlife courses. And so that's what's unique. They really get many wildlife courses while they're here. And we had a student that moved off and got their work on the 4-year degree. And so he got the classes, he got the experience here with the activities. And he said, I feel like I did this backwards because he got all this experience early on. Yeah. And now he's at the 4-year institution, not getting as much experience. So, and then he just, grateful that for his opportunities here in the program.
So is there not a lot of hands-on at the Sul Ross level or at the 4-year level? At the
4-year level across the state, I would say that we are very competitive and probably do.
We do a lot
more.
There's no question. Yeah. And that's why they like our students. When they transfer to Sul Ross, our friends there will tell us, they'll let us know. They're quite candid whether we're sending a good product. Okay. And when those students get there, to be mundane minutia, but basically they know how to open the gate and close it when they go through it, so to speak. And so they have a lot of common sense management practices that they apply here. But one thing I want to mention is all this field work that we do, and we do a bunch of it. And most of it's on ranches that I've worked with for years as a consultant. But these youngsters are going out, and one of the things I always mandated was that whenever we're on a ranch, when we're leaving that ranch, I want you to visit with the landowner, talk to them, thank them. Because communication, they learn how to communicate with people that are extremely wealthy that can afford these properties. And basically, when it all boils down to this one factor, that is, we don't really manage wildlife. We manage people. We've got to be able to communicate with people. And that is one of the driving forces that Dean and Daniel instill into these students because they want to, you come out of this program and we have students working on ranches all over the state and in New Mexico, like you mentioned earlier. But they have the communication skills and the ability to listen. Sometimes listening is a lot more important than talking. And so those skill sets, they're not going to get in a 4-year school. The guys, unfortunately, our friends in the what I call the big leagues, and I refer to us as Sandlot. Basically, they don't have the luxury of time to instill those types of valuable personal skills that we can allow the students to entertain and acquire over their couple of years here.
And then even whenever Bob created this program, he laid out assignments for students to basically force them to interact with students. We have with landowners. We have the wildlife management plan as sophomores every spring. We pick a different land holding every spring where they have to go out, talk with a landowner, get their goals and objectives, and be able to put it in a comprehensive plan. And they have to do it individually and then in a group, and then they have to come together as a class. And to be able to build a product together as a class and be able to present it, it takes a lot of effort to work together. And
you find out the cream of the crop really quick.
Yeah.
Because they're doing a lot of the work.
And then the really cool thing about it is we bring that landowner in and they present to that landowner in the classroom. Landowner can ask them any questions. It's a free-for-all. And it's one of those students really build up to it. And I honestly, earlier you talked about graduation. I get more enjoyment seeing students whenever they have to present that management plan, because that's where that's the real big build-up for the whole semester and really for our program. Because that's everything that they learned in this program comes to point there.
Yeah, wildlife management is our gatekeeper course, and that's what Daniel teaches. And basically, it's it consolidates everything that we hope that they acquire from us, from these two gentlemen, throughout their 2 years. And basically, they got to know what they're doing. A landowner's much smarter than we are. Because if we were smarter than the landowners, we'd be the ones owning the ranches, right?
They'd be working for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the bottom line is these skill sets that they're applying are useful to these youngsters, and it helps them when they go on to further their education as well. It's a very unique program, and a way it's formulated. It's a helpful program as well.
So, I think one of the things that we didn't discuss in the last episode that I want to discuss this episode is what are some of the actual courses that they're taking when they're in the wildlife program? I mean, and I know you mentioned the wildlife program or the wildlife
techniques.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other courses they're taking, and what can they expect?
Well, before the guys let Daniel and Dean talk on that subject, but before I do that, I think it's important to understand that our program is one which is highly academic. I mean, these youngsters are taking some serious courses, like Dean's GIS class. They're learning how to use ArcView, and I'm not going to steal your thunder.
That's fine. Go ahead.
You go ahead and give them a little spiel on that, and Daniel could follow up on some of the field stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got 2 GIS courses, so Geographic Information Systems, and so. Excuse me. So those courses we've designed, especially the first course, is designed where students learn how to use this software, and it's basically kind of like using another language. So it's like similar to where you're working with Microsoft Word or Excel. You got simple steps. There's certain things you have to do, and the same thing applies to using this software called ArcGIS Pro. And this software, the newest version came out about 2 years ago. And so we're one of the few universities that are starting to implement that. And so that software is where the students get to use the software to help build a map. And that map is going to have, for example, to obviously have the aerial imagery of the ranch. And then they can also put placement of feeders, blinds, headquarters, you name it. They can put whatever they want.
Even
to
the vegetative types,
vegetation,
if they so choose.
And then the second class we get more advanced, and that's when we start bringing in the use of drones. That way, students have an understanding how to use a drone and the software that's available if they wanted to use a drone once they leave the program. And so those 2 courses are really, some more technology courses. But GIS is really, it's continuing to grow and develop. And I know Daniel has a family member that that's their job is GIS related. We actually have a student that I talked to a while back, and he got a job because he had some GIS experience. And so it's a resource that it can be utilized on many different levels. And the software that we use, there's so much capability. We just really look at the tip of the iceberg, but the students get a really good fundamental knowledge and how to use it. And then if they want to take off and do things on their own, we let them loose.
So how does the landowner, rancher, farmer, I mean, how does he incorporate that into his wildlife, management?
Well, it depends on what the landowner would like to do. And one example is the students this past spring semester in wildlife management plan. The landowner and the ranch manager, they were focusing on cedar removal. They had some areas that had quite a bit of cedar canopy, and so they wanted to remove some, but they didn't, or I actually removed more, but they weren't exactly sure how much. And so the students actually used a software to build a map to where they could show where the cedars were located across the ranch. And so that gave the ranch manager a great visual view of where you could see that cedar canopy and areas that they could focus more on management and have some removal. So that would be one really good example.
Yeah.
But that was really advanced. I learned that tool in my graduate level.
Yeah, but
so they're using it as a sophomore.
Yeah.
It's not just building a square around where they think cedars are.
It's highly technical information that they're acquiring. And like Dean mentioned, there's a lot of jobs just with your familiarity with the tool. When I first got a little grant, that's how we first started it back, 15, 18 years ago. It was pretty challenging for us to learn the tool. And because I never had a course in GIS. There was no GIS when I was in school. Anyhow, there was a lot of things that weren't in school when I was in school.
The scrolls, the old scrolls.
Yeah. I mean, I could read a scroll, but give me a computer. It was a challenging event. But no, the technology we have here with Dean teaching that course, it's a big asset, because they also, like for another example, I use ArcGIS all the time when I'm conducting aerial surveys, and I take transects. I've got all of it and I map it out for the landowner so they see exactly where I flew. There's just, and if you want to duplicate your survey, you can fly the exact same map route every year.
Right.
And so it's a very useful tool. Yeah, no question.
Anything that you think that you can provide a visual for the landowner from a map, you can do it in GIS.
Okay.
I mean, it's a very useful tool.
One of the fun things, Daniel, on that is, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
you're good.
Basically, like you have a landowner who just bought a piece of property and say it's 1,000 acres, and he puts out 3 feeders. He might think that's going to, he wants to feed animals, whether it's squirrels, deer, whatever, turkeys, but he has to distribute those as he does the water throughout the ranch. And what you could do with ArcGIS is you could buffer those, each point, GPS point of water or feeders, and then buffer it, put a half mile, even a mile buffer around it. And it'll show you your pockets where you probably should have a feeder because there's a big void.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that, the application is diversified. It's a wonderful field to examine, and we're proud to say that we've had one of the first programs to start here, and it's excelled. I mean that's why I say we're in a technical branch, but we're not necessarily technical.
Yeah,
it's pretty strong academics. I mean, they're not getting that as a freshman and a sophomore in a major college, not that I'm aware of.
No.
Okay, so the earlier you get involved with this, the better you'll be later when you get advanced knowledge handed to you, and you gotta be equipped to pull that in. So anyhow, it's a great tool. And Daniel's in the field all the time. Well, we're all in the field all the time. But,
and I think another course that really sets our program apart is our wildlife identification course. We really focus heavily on plant identification. And it's something that we get complimented all the time from other major universities. Because they tend to steal our plant team students as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and actually,
they recruit.
Dean needs to talk about our plant team a little bit.
Yeah, but real quickly, we were talking to our students that were at Sol Ross this spring, and they said, what do you think was one of the most strong areas? And they said plant ID. We, compared to our other cohort, our other classmates, our plant ID is so much stronger. Mm-hmm. And so I, attributed that to our plant ID, our wildlife ID course.
In the field.
On plants in the field, yeah.
Every Tuesday, they're out all afternoon. I mean, there's no time frame. I mean, we try to get the students back at a reasonable time, but if we're looking for certain things, that's what we got to find to show them. Sometimes you only see one plant one time a year. Exactly. I mean, that's it. And so we focus in on that. But it's a great opportunity for students.
And even tying back to the name of our podcast, Wildlife at the Crossroads, we can look at plants in every ecoregion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that, I think the area that we're in, and even just Texas, it's got all different types of just terrain and different types of
10 different ecoregions. There's 10 different sets of plants out there. Some similar, but a lot of them are quite different depending on the climate.
So I didn't mean to interrupt, but you were talking about.
Yeah, and so being able to go and see the plants at those ecoregions is a major value. I think, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, something that I feel like is lacking professionally is the knowledge of plants.
Yeah.
It seems like that is something that can be better in our industry right now. And to come out with a good foundation of plants, know what they look like in the field versus just a plant press or even a potted plant is something that's very valuable. Because there's a lot of people that they can't look at a grass and be able to identify it, or look at brush without leaves on it and be able to identify it based off plant structure.
Right.
And that's something that's very valuable. And heck, even at Bob's stage, Bob's identifying plants out of a helicopter. That's like the top level of being able to do that. And so we're just building the foundation of being able to identify plants on the fly, being able to drive down the road. And that's something that I know a lot of our students now, like, every time that I'm driving, my eyes are off the road, and it's like, well, you gotta be safe about it, but they're picking up plants.
Yeah, but the governor's going to pass a bill. You can't be looking for plants while you're driving. But yeah.
So what is the typical plant ID, field trip when y'all go out there?
So we'll leave the college at about noon, and 1 to 2 vans, and we'll go to just the various ranches around South Texas Hill Country. And we'll get out, and we'll go slow to begin with. Dean and I will explain each plant in detail. Students are going to take notes about the plants, growth structures, the purpose, things that you can do with the plants, the value to wildlife. And then from that point, it's repetition.
And I think that's really important. Yeah, repetition, and that's really important. I think that's great at how the class is structured through repetition, because, there's a certain, how I like to explain it with the students, that might have some difficulty, remembering each plant. It's, your brain sort of gets saturated, where you look at different plants, and then maybe by the 5th plant, it's mesquite. Every single plant looks like a mesquite. Yeah. So,
everything's green out there. When you don't know your
it's
plants,
hard. It's hard.
A smorgasbord of green.
Yeah. Right.
And basically, these guys are allowing the students to actually identify individual plants, which is critically important. Because I always called, habitat management is the infrastructure to wildlife management. In other words, what I mean by saying that is the fact that if you don't know what develops out there and how to enhance it, because there's some plants that we consider are primarily high in nutrition, and we want more of those. And how do we do that? But we got to first identify the plants before we can perform that.
So is there, if as a wildlife manager or a ranch manager, if there's not the sufficient enough of the plants that you need to produce a, high quality, wildlife,
Mm-hmm.
do they plant some of that? Do they
Oh,
bring
yeah,
some
they
of that
can.
stuff in there?
That's where habitat management comes
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
That's where
But
They add, remove whatever
Mhm.
they feel.
But it's not always planting. Sometimes we're roller chopping or aerating or disking or even shredding, and we're knocking the plants back in their successional stages where they allow more sunlight to permeate or penetrate the ground layer, which allows forb production, which forbs are 100% digestible. The brush that deer consume is only 50% digestible. So if a plant has, say, Grand Hano has 21% crude protein in it as a component during the spring, well, it's only 7.5% that's digestible. Whereas a forb might be 20, 21%, 22. It's usually higher than the brush, but it's 100% digestible. So if you know which forbs are the best and you know what it takes to develop them, it's a win-win situation for you as a manager and for the wildlife, nutritionally speaking.
Right. Yeah, so that's always something that I've wondered. Well, not always, but since I've been here and knowing about the wildlife management program, so are they actually manipulating the land
Yes,
in
that's
order
what-
to make it more,
yes.
Mhm.
I guess, more
Beneficial.
beneficial for the,
Mhm.
for the
That's what
wildlife?
Dean was talking about in Daniel's wildlife management class, techniques class. They were talking about removal of cedar because cedar usurps a lot of rainfall. But 90% of the rain that hits cedar never hits the ground. Okay, so there's nothing much going to grow under cedar.
Oh, okay.
But cedar also provides screen cover. That means shade
Mhm.
from the heat and from colder weather and travel lanes and such. So these guys got to educate the youngsters in how to manipulate that habitat so that it provides all those things. And it's a holistic approach in wildlife management so that the deer have places to move about, but they also have places to hide. But they also have places where they can feed because the cedar's removed and, you got an upgrowth or an increase in forb and even brush production, which is
Yeah.
healthy for
So does
the animals.
wildlife management on a ranch, does that also include removal of like their predators? If you want to keep,
it can.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a variety of reasons why you would do any tool. But the number one thing, and it goes back to what Bob said earlier, it just depends on what the landowner wants, and that's people management.
Yeah.
And so, is your deer herd struggling to reproduce? Are you not having very many fawns? And predator control can be looked into. If you have too many deer producing, then you can use coyote as a tool to help you
Absolutely.
lower
That's
the
what point I was going to make. Everybody thinks you got to shoot every coyote that's on the landowner. Coyotes are not decreasing. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And just like rattlesnakes, people decimate rattlesnakes and coyotes any chance they get, but we still have plenty of them. Well, more importantly, what I'm trying to say is that predators can help control populations. That's a natural control mechanism that helps because most people don't harvest enough animals to reduce the pressure that those animals apply to the habitat. Mm-hmm. So, I've even published on that before where a lot of landowners are hesitant to have people on their properties. Why? Because they like the quiescent atmosphere that they've created and they've paid for, and it's expensive. And so they don't want to have a lot of hunters. It takes a lot of hunters to harvest animals at a beneficial rate. Right. And so with coyotes, they could help. The problem with coyotes is they're not discretionary. They'll take a buck fawn, doe fawn, or they'll take a buck that's bleeding from a buck fight during a rut and take him down. So they're not very discretionary, and that's the downfall of predators such as coyotes.
Yeah. So is that the only predator for deer in this area?
No, there's lions.
Are there
Bears will take them.
mountain lions?
Right.
Mountain
Mountain
lions.
lions. We don't have a high density of mountain lions.
Bobcats, I guess. Do we have?
Yeah,
We have some
bobcats will take
bobcats.
fawns.
Fawns, yeah.
But in the Pecos,
We don't
we
have-
got quite a few lions.
Wolves? We don't have many wolves
No.
around. No.
No wolves.
Not
No.
four-legged.
Yeah. Well, I know that there is up north, like Wyoming, you know,
Mhm.
Montana.
Yellowstone,
Mhm.
Colorado.
They started to reintroduce wolves back
Mhm.
Montana.
into the,
Yes.
and so I guess because it's just it's more of a,
Well, they're native indigenous to that region,
Yeah.
so they wanted to reinstate the populations. But there's a lot of conflicts there. Landowners
yeah, 'cause
are not totally acceptable to that because a lot of them raise livestock.
yeah,
And, you know, even in Yellowstone National Park, the elk herd has suffered because of the wolf reintroduction. You don't see the stud horse elk we used to see, big old 400-inch elk walking around in that protected environment. I mean, they're getting nailed. But you know, wolves, coyotes, everything has its place, and it's usually when man takes precedence over the animal that we get in trouble, so to speak. When they want, I think we got to do something like this, you know, introduce wolves, and then there's a little problem because we go through a time frame where there weren't many wolves. Populations were rising, hunters were happy, but that's not necessarily always true. And we got to be careful making decisions. That's why education at the higher levels is important, because that's where our guys, youngsters, leave here. They get that type of information, and you know, they go, and like Dean, he's got his PhD. You know, you're fine tuning. You're really fine tuning it down to a really fine point on expertise, and we're real proud. That's why I'm really proud to have Dean on board as a team member here. He does a great job, and he studied under Dr. Fulbright, very close friend of mine, and probably one of the top rangemen in the U.S. And so, you know, we've got a lot to offer, but so do those other institutions as they go on. And then even when they get a PhD, there's another level that's the hardest to achieve, and that's certification by our Wildlife Society, our parent society. And that's challenging. That's a tough one to make. That's a tough egg to crack, simply because you got to have all the correct courses taken. There's mandatory courses that you got to satisfy for certification, plus experience. And you guys could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you graduate with a bachelor's, you have to work in the wildlife field for 10 years. And then with your master's, it's 5 years. But with a PhD, how much is it? Is it the same?
Excuse me, I'm not sure the number of years, to be honest with you. I need to look into that.
I don't think it's a number of years for a PhD, but the number of courses. The
courses is important. You got to take specific courses as part of that. And then there might be some accommodation there depending on the course that you take or the sciences that you take. They might help or accommodate you, but you do have to have that years of experience before you officially have that title of certified wildlife biologist. It's through the Wildlife Society, so it's a national organization.
Mm-hmm. So is that what you are? Are you a certified
biologist? Yes. And there's also, even if you get certified, you have to upgrade your education every year. Yeah. I mean, you got like a report card that you hand in every year, you know, to sustain your certification. But, you know, all in all, coming back full circle to our program, we're preparing youngsters to get out in the field immediately. I mean, get them on ranches. We have a plethora of ranches all over this region. Yeah. People are more than willing to take on the opportunity to have our youngsters manage their very expensive pieces of real estate.
And that's one thing that we're really grateful for, to be able to have that open access with these landowners, ranch managers.
Makes the program.
Yeah, and they're our friends. You know, really friends and family is how we consider the people that we work with.
So do we how many students from this graduating class already have jobs going into or coming out of?
So two off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, I guess we were looking at the numbers last week. We got 80% of our students either going to a 4-year institution or going in or have a job or will be getting a job. So yeah.
And that doesn't count how many jobs that even I had provided this year that for former students,
Right.
moving them into other positions up in the higher level. But we have more job opportunities than we have students, and I like to say not willing to take the positions.
And that is for our internships. That's for our internships while our students are here taking our courses. Yeah. And that's another great aspect of our program is the opportunities that are, obviously our students are getting in the classroom, more importantly out in the field. But then when they're done with class, they can go out and have an internship and maybe make some money in the process and get that great experience because when you're working in the wildlife field, you're wearing so many different hats. Obviously we want to think about in the fall, performing helicopter surveys or doing, hunting and guiding and things like that. But also there's other aspects of wildlife management.
Planting oak patches.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Replacing the tire on the tractors.
Absolutely. Water line repair, carpentry, the list goes on and on.
Yes.
Yeah. And so having that internship allows those students to get that important skill set that they can use and they can actually be more they can obviously it's like an advertisement when they can put that on their resume, right?
Just more marketable.
If a water line breaks, a water pipe's busted or what have you, it costs a lot of money to get somebody to come out onto a ranch 50, 60 miles from town. But that's why I feel like our students they've had hands-on opportunities to perform such tasks. And that is very attractive to ranchers.
And if you can stick it out in private land, that is a testament to your character. You have proven character with your resume that basically goes with, I can live on a ranch, I can operate on a ranch, I can be in the heat, I can do some things that probably are uncomfortable to most people in society, but you're still performing, and then you get to really do some really neat things with it. That's where the aerial surveys, being in the helicopters in the fall, doing deer captures and different things, it complements the hard work that you put into it.
Yeah, I want to talk about the different activities. Unfortunately, I think we'll run out of time, but just to touch on it and then we'll...
Well, the next podcast, we were going to focus, boom.
Right, so just to kind of give us a little teaser into the next one, let's just kind of run down. Don't really have to get into the weeds about all the different activities, but I guess the start of the year is in the fall. So what are they doing at that point?
Well, the first couple of weeks, we are working at a ranch just north of town, working with the breeder facility, and they have some bucks that they cut their antlers off, and the reason why their antlers are going to be cut off is so they don't hurt each other in the pen, or in that enclosure that they're in. And so our students are there working with the landowner and also the ranch manager and staff. And so these deer are actually run through the facility and they have the antlers cut off. And we do that at night. And Daniel and I are there with them, shoulder to shoulder. And so it's a great opportunity for students to get a really good, kind of a break the ice type of deal for wildlife management.
And that's an activity that we've been fortunate enough to have for almost 20 years. It's one of the original activities that we've had.
When you were here, I probably started it about 2 years before you were here.
So 18 years then.
Yeah.
And so very fortunate to have that one. And they touch a couple hundred deer within the first 2 weeks of class.
Big. Some of them are huge antlered.
And so to be able to have that opportunity is pretty remarkable. And then that goes directly into the deer captures in the fall.
You got Plan ID in the fall.
Plan ID in the fall. We're going to ranches every Tuesday. Bob will have 4 to 5 deer captures set up for us in the fall, which we're always fortunate to be able to do. That's a highlight, no question.
Yeah, I think that's one of the highlight or one of the highlights, top two, I think, in the program, the deer captures. And so it's exciting, get to work, live deer, wild deer, right?
Right.
And so and it's really good. We get to interact with the students, and so
And they're doing all the work. I mean,
absolutely
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're taking pictures, or we're trying to take pictures.
But I mean, they're getting experience. They're getting their hands dirty.
Absolutely.
And their pants ripped.
Oh,
Because those deer
yeah.
kicked the fool out of them.
Oh yeah,
Or
those
bite
hooves
their
are sharp.
fingers.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they're really involved doing that. And then over the course of the fall, we've got we'll have different activities where we'll have a booth set up, and students are with us and talk about our program to either potential students that we might meet, our family members. And so that's a really great resource that students can start utilizing communication skills, and that's another great opportunity. And then we get into December, and we have a great event here at the college called Christmas. What is it called?
Christmas at college.
Christmas at the college. There you go.
We made it.
And,
We made it as simple as possible,
Yeah.
so no one would forget. But apparently, Dean is so smart.
Well, yeah.
I think he's got so much stuff in his.
I got so many thoughts
One
going
of
through
these
my head
days,
right
I'm
now.
going to have to, on the podcast, explain the monkey climbing up a palm tree and its relationship to a PhD at some point in time.
But
But,
apparently, in that PhD program, being on time to the podcast was not.
yeah, he wasn't even on time today. We waited
Hey.
for him for a half hour.
Hey, what can I say? I'm a busy guy. I've got things I got to
Yeah,
do.
you're busy.
So,
all
yeah,
right.
I mean, just very
You're going to have
quickly-
plenty of time. We'll take it easy if you keep coming in late.
I mean, joking around, right? But all
Lord.
kidding aside, what were you doing? It was something that I found interesting. What were you actually doing?
Probably a
this morning?
Whataburger.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think what I was doing this morning. I was at a herbicide training, and so it is a training where you have to get this training in order. It's the first step that you need to have in order to get your private herbicide or private pesticide applicator's license. And so in an effort to there are some herbicides that you need to spray on rangelands if you have to, that require this license. And so on my farm and ranch, there are some herbicides that we spray. So I need to get that license. And so I went through that training this morning, and now got to send some things into the state, and then you have to take an exam and then get that wrapped up, and then I'll be fully licensed.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's something he'll bring into the classroom
Yeah,
too. I
exactly.
mean, everything that we learn,
Yep.
we share with our students, and as biologists, that's probably more important than managing wildlife, helping youngsters that'll replace us someday.
Hopefully.
Well, I tried to pick one. That didn't work out too good.
Well, he replaced you. It just
He
came in
did
a little
replace
late.
me.
Just
But
came in a little bit late.
But to be honest with you, I wasn't hard to replace.
Oh, geez.
Always the modest man,
Yeah,
Bob
oh,
Zagman
yeah.
over here. All right, boys. I guess we've been at it almost an hour, so we're gonna go and just wrap this one up and start getting ready for the next one. So
Thanks,
I appreciate it. No,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah,
guys.
appreciate
Thank you
you
guys.
very much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
guys.
Skiz, for your hard work,
And-
buddy.
no
Appreciate
problem.
it.
And Daniel, we got
Daniel
our producer over here. He's always got us
He
sounding
does
good
a
and
great
looking
job.
good, so
We appreciate
All right.
him very much.
we'll talk to you
Okay.
next time.